Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. We are Miasin. We are together. And together tonight with Los Angeles County Sheriff Jim McDonnell. Please join me and let's greet the Sheriff. Sheriff, welcome. Good evening.
Thank you.
It is very, very nice to have you here because we have been serving the county, you have been serving the community for a while, and we want to touch base with you about the achievements, about the changes, about the future, and mainly, of course, thank you and thank everyone in the law enforcement agencies for protecting us, for securing our safety, and so on. So, again, welcome, Sheriff.
Thank you.
And let's start with this kind of maybe classical question. You've been serving for a while. How do you feel?
I feel very good. I feel like we're in a very good place today compared to where we were 4 years ago when I began this job. I came into this job after having served 29 years with the Los Angeles Police Department and 5 years as Chief of Police in Long Beach. And so I came in very excited about the opportunities. We were coming in at a very difficult time in our history. But we've been able to turn it around, and the three things that we really wanted to be able to accomplish in the 4 year was to restore the shine on the badge, to be able to restore our image among the law enforcement community nationwide, and most importantly, to be able to restore public trust with the communities that we serve here in Los Angeles County. So while never a job that you can check the box and say we're done, it's always a work in progress, we've come a long way, and that's a credit to the men and women of the organization who've done it.
Definitely. And Sheriff, do you consider this a job or a service? Or a calling?
It's a calling. It's a profession. It's a mission, really, that every day you come to work hoping that you'll be in the right place at the right time and make the right decisions to be able to help people. And sometimes those are life-saving decisions, and other times it's hopefully being able to facilitate the work that the men and women of the organization do in the jails and the courts and the colleges and on the street. That they are actually having a direct impact on saving lives, and my mission is to support them.
They definitely do. And since you mentioned the law enforcement community, you mentioned schools, courts, jails, on the street, then what is the difference actually between the sheriff department and the police department and other law enforcement agencies?
Yeah, that's a question I get a lot is, hey, you were a police chief, now you're a sheriff, what's the difference between the two? And to be honest, a police chief has similar duties throughout the country. Different scale, but the duties are much the same. Whereas a sheriff, it depends where you are in the country as to what the job duties are. For instance, here in Los Angeles County, we're responsible for what the public would probably see as traditional policing duties, much like LAPD, our neighbor next door, does. They do it for 4 million people over 470 square miles. We do it directly for 4 million people, indirectly for 10 million people over 4,700 square miles, with roughly the same number of sworn deputies as they have officers. But then in addition, we're responsible for the jail, the court, the colleges, the hospitals, the parks, search and rescue, and a third of MTA. So we are stretched very lean, but we also have the ability to be able to move people from one specialty to another. So the job never really gets boring. If you want a change, then you move to a different part of the department, and it's like having a whole new job.
Once anyone starts feeling that the job is getting boring, they have to quit and look for something else, right?
Yeah.
So apparently the difference is, as already the name tells, the main difference is maybe the jurisdiction or the geographical area.
Right.
One is serving the city, one is serving the county.
Right.
And that's what I understood, 470 square miles versus 4,700 square miles.
And when we say we're serving the county, we are a county-wide organization, but we are the police agency by contract for 42 cities throughout the county of Los Angeles. There's 88 cities. 42 we police, as well as the 130 unincorporated areas throughout the county. And then we provide something as a resource to pretty much everybody else within the county. So when somebody needs help, mutual aid, or we can do something with them, for them from the crime lab or from the bomb squad or our air support, we're there for them in that regard. Or if they need additional personnel to be able to take care of an immediate emergency, then we come and help out as best we can.
And apparently then you cover the cities that, as you just mentioned, Sheriff, the unincorporated cities, the cities that don't have their own police department.
Right.
Wonderful. Okay, now it's been 4 years serving as the Los Angeles County Sheriff, And what are the additional changes? What are the achievements that you want to talk about, if there's anything other than those three majors that you just mentioned?
Yeah, those are kind of umbrella goals that we have, but within the organization, increasing the level of accountability. We added two constitutional policing advisors. Those are two people who are trained as attorneys who are within the organization, and they troubleshoot things to ensure that we're doing policing in a constitutional manner and to be able to ensure that discipline is fair and equitable across the department, as well as other critical measures they take to ensure that we're working as well as we can. I sat on the Citizens Commission on jail violence prior to becoming sheriff, and had the opportunity to be able to see the department in a place that none of us would have been proud of, a great organization going through some very difficult times. As a result of that, we put in place then our recommendations, an inspector general with a full staff to be able to have the ability to look anywhere in the department at whatever the issues may be, any concerns they have, and to ensure that it's a smooth running operation throughout. And we work very closely with the inspector general and have opened up the department to them completely. They have access to everything. In addition, we have recently implemented with the Board of Supervisors a Civilian Oversight Commission, and they as well are a vehicle for communication from the various communities throughout the county, as well as from the Sheriff's Department to those communities on what's going on, what our stance is on certain things, what our posture has been, what's working, what's not working, what do we need help with, to be able to look at an organization and be able to say, we can't do this alone. We need the help of the public that we're privileged to serve, and to have a vehicle for that. We have people on that commission who are very sharp. They come from a variety of different backgrounds, tremendous experience in a number of different fields, and I greatly value what they bring to the table.
And of course, we always greatly value your service and the entire, of course, the organization's service. And you've been serving for 4 years in the position. Before that, you served, if I'm not mistaken, 5 years as the police chief.
Right.
Why are you running again?
Yeah, you know, I've been asked that a number of times. I've got over 37 years now in policing in Los Angeles County. I'm very proud of the work that we've been able to do. I've had a tremendous career in 3 different agencies, and I wouldn't trade any of that for anything. But I look at where we are today. We have accomplished a lot in the last 4 years, but we have a lot left to do. And I don't want to leave the organization and not be able to complete the things that are very attainable in the short term, but rather to be able to see this through, to be able to take a lot of our goals and see them through fruition, as well as to be able to continue to work with the men and women of the LASD who do a very difficult, complex, and often dangerous job exceptionally well. I'm very, very proud of the organization and be privileged to be able to lead it.
Would you please take our salutations to them when you go back?
Absolutely, I'd be honored.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the detailed answer, Sheriff. And at one point, I heard you mentioning a lot left to do.
Right.
So we're talking about tomorrow. The elections are on November 6th,
Right.
less than a month from now.
Right.
So what plans do you have? What is that a lot that we need to do, or in this case, you, the department, the organization needs to do?
Well, thank you. It will not be so much rolling out new programs once the new administration starts, but rather a continuation of the reforms that we have in place, building on the foundation that we've been able to lay in the last 4 years, as well as the great foundation that the organization has had traditionally. To be able to move forward on a number of fronts, certainly the reform agenda that we've been working on very diligently for 4 years needs to continue. Recent comments by the monitor team who oversees one of our consent decrees about basically the conduct within the jails, use of force issues within the jail, a big problem for us previously. What they said was they have seen in the last 4 years a positive sea change in the treatment of the inmates by the staff from our department. To me, that is an incredible tribute to the efforts we've undertaken, to the success we've been able to achieve. When you look at the population that we deal with in the county jail system, unlike in years past where it were people who were in there pre-trial or people sentenced for up to a year, today I have about 500 people sentenced to 5 years or more, one guy for 42 years, and so it is more of a state prison population, inmate population than a county jail traditional population. And then coupled with the challenges we face with the increasing population of seriously mentally ill inmates that we have in our custody, makes for a very difficult and complex environment for our staff to work in.
Good to hear, and we will be back in a few minutes with some additional questions, if you don't mind,
Thanks,
Sheriff.
Manoush. My pleasure.
Kavasnerin Yetkevera Tarnank will be back in a few minutes. We're back, and we're still together, and with us together is the Los Angeles County Sheriff, Jim McDonnell. Sheriff,
Sure.
glad to have you here again and continuing this really interesting conversation. And speaking of the changes that you mentioned earlier before we went to the break in the jail system. Jails or prisons are perceived as correction facilities rather than punishment
Sure.
facilities.
Right.
How can you evaluate the work that has been done in the past 4 years in this regard, in this direction?
Yeah, well, I think there was certainly a perception previously that punishment may have been part of what was going on there because of the abuses that we saw. There were accounts of brutality and some corruption and pay-to-play issues, and as a result, a number of employees were indicted and ultimately convicted. So we've come from a very troubled place in that regard to a place now where we work very hard to create an environment that's as therapeutic as we can make it, particularly for those with substance abuse problems and mental health issues that they're dealing with. When I look at the population that we're talking about on any given day, we have about 17,000 inmates in our care and custody. And our role is not to punish, but to provide for their care while they're in our custody. And that is something that our employees do a tremendous job. When I go through the jails and I have the opportunity to be able to interact not only with our staff but with the inmate population, I've been pulled aside a number of times in the last 4 years where inmates have said to me, hey, I just want to take an opportunity to say thank you. I've been in and out of here much of my adult life, and it's never been as good as it is today. I've never been treated with the level of respect that I get today. And in that environment that's as tough as it is, to be able to get those kind of unsolicited comments from people who have nothing to gain by saying that is a validation of the good work that our men and women are doing each and every day in the jails. What we look for in an LASD employee, whether professional staff or sworn, are somebody who comes to us with good character, somebody who lifelong tries to be as good as they can at what they do, so a high level of competence. But critically important, never probably more so than in today's environment with the issues we're dealing with, is compassion, is being in a place where you're looking out for somebody else, seeing them as a human being and trying to provide what you can for their betterment so that when they leave us, hopefully they'll be in better shape than when they came into our custody. We have all sorts of programs, education within the custody environment so that people can get high school diplomas or GEDs, as well as job
while
they're in custody, right? As well as job training to the degree that we can provide that, and that is something that we would like to do more of, to be able to give somebody skills so that they're employable when they leave our custody and put them on a different track than they would otherwise be, and hopefully not have them come back into our custody down the road.
And usually we say, this is what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Now, with all due respect to all the details, Sheriff, but I really loved particularly 2 words, care, compassion. And I believe that makes a big difference in the life of those people who are in your custody or you've been in your custody for a while. And after all, they are humans that have made some mistakes, but after all, they got to go back to life and be productive and be nice and be kind. And we really thank you for that kind of a service, that kind of a support that you are providing, the department is providing to those people. Now, as you mentioned, Sheriff, that gentleman had nothing to gain by saying those nice words, but he didn't have anything to lose either by not saying those words. So when they said it, I believe they meant it, and that's another Medal of Honor, I would say.
Well, thank you.
And usually all candidates, whatever the position they are running for, whatever the post they are running for, they would say the best things. With all due respect, Jerry.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. What makes you the best candidate?
Experience. I think more than anything else, when I look at what I've been privileged to be able to do in my career, having spent 29 years with the Los Angeles Police Department, having risen to the #2 spot there, going to be Chief of Police of Long Beach for almost 5 years there, and the experience that I got there, and then coming into the Sheriff's Office after having served on the Citizens Commission on Jail Violence, but also now 4 years as sheriff, doing the job, managing a $3.3 billion budget, overseeing a workforce of 18,000 employees, overseeing an inmate population of over 17,000 inmates, and dealing with all of the challenges that we face in today's policing environment. It's a very difficult and complex environment, not only here locally, but nationally. We are a leader in law enforcement. Other agencies come to Los Angeles to look and see what we're doing in the hopes of replicating that. And I'm very proud of the work that's been done in that regard. And I'll throw out just an example. We started a human trafficking bureau in November of 2015. We saw the need. We saw our young kids being trafficked by many of that gang members from our communities. The population we're talking about for a kid, and mostly girls, but 1 out of 6 is a boy, to get involved in this is between the ages of 12 and 14. So these are very young people, very vulnerable people. About 70% of that population come from the foster care system. So often they are very vulnerable. They've been kids who've been abused much of their lives and are looking for something bigger than themselves. And unfortunately, people exploit that, take advantage of them, and enslave them in a lifestyle that is ultimately going to kill them unless we can break them away from that. And so we started a bureau to address that, and a task force. We brought in others to be able to work with us, community-based organizations, the Coalition to Abolish Slavery and Trafficking, probation, the Department of Children and Family Services, and others, as well as prosecutors from the DA's office and the U.S. Attorney's office. So we have what has become a model for the rest of the nation with regard particularly enforcement of sex trafficking laws. I look at the success we've had, if you will, in the time since that's been up and running from November of 2015. We have arrested over 1,200 people and held them accountable for pimping, pandering, gun charges, drug charges. But as importantly, we've rescued over 280 young people from the life and gotten them into counseling and psychological wraparound services to be able to hopefully put them on the right track so they don't go back into this life, and they are productive moving forward and healthy. We try and get them back into school as a big part of that, since they are young people. And so we have been cited by Harvard University in a write-up talking about our efforts here in that regard, and the Department of Justice looks at us as a potential model for other agencies throughout the country to want to replicate. So we see a need, and we can't help but to try and do something about it. Many would say that, you're focused on things that are not core police functions, and where you're strained so much from a personnel standpoint, why do you do that? And I look at our Sheriff's Youth Foundation and our youth centers, 17 of them throughout the county, and we see what happens if we don't participate in helping kids after school with homework, with activities and sports, that they're on the streets, that they're potentially going to be jumped into gangs, they get involved in alcohol and drugs. And we want to do everything we can to prevent that from happening, because although it may be not our responsibility today to do what we're doing, it will become our responsibility tomorrow if we don't. And so that, much like the whole counterterrorism effort, we were not in that business, certainly not anywhere to the degree that we are today prior to 9/11. But today that is a big part of what we do, and we have a very robust counterterrorism operation here in Los Angeles County. Work very well with our state, local, and federal partners in that regard. And again, something I would say that is somewhat of a model for others to look at.
Sheriff, there is a big difference between responsibility and commitment.
Right.
And what I am seeing now is more of a commitment to serve and to service, rather than only mere legal responsibilities. I salute you. I salute the department. Basically, you have about 35 or over 35,000 people under your own personal care, and you have over 10 million people you serve.
Right.
That's a big responsibility. But before that, commitment is what I am feeling, I am seeing. And again, I congratulate your service.
Thank you, Manoj.
And when it comes to sex trafficking, that's really, really, really a sad matter. It's a tragedy that is going on around us, here in the 21st century.
Right.
Unfortunately, the signs of human trafficking are all around us. I don't know how we cannot see it, but again, you've started the right thing. And if you don't mind, yes, you have arrested some people, but what more important is, from my own opinion, if you don't mind, Sheriff, is
Please.
that you've saved
Right,
people.
right.
And of course, prevention is the best medicine. I guess you are going to that direction. Am I right? Did I get it right?
Yeah, thank you. You know, and education is probably our best tool, and we try and do that with young people in the schools, with teachers, to be able to know what to look for. But as importantly is members of the community, that if you see men coming and going from a location, and that location could be a vacant house next door, an RV parked at the end of the block, it could be a motel or a hotel. Every crime needs a location to occur, and if you see something that doesn't look right to you, men coming and going, staying a short time and leaving, they're either there buying sex or buying drugs. Give us a call. We want to come out there. That call you make may save the life of a 10 or a 12-year-old girl, and we're honored to be able to do it. If we get out there and there's nothing amiss and everything is fine, we say hello to people and we move on and go about our business. But if we get there and we see something that somebody's being victimized, held against their will, and being subjected to what ultimately is often torture, and you know, the things that are done to these young people are just horrific. That one phone call you make may change all that for that young person, may save a life. So I would ask people, feel free to get involved. You can do it anonymously, but give us a call and get us out there to check out a situation if you don't feel right about it.
Sheriff, would you allow me to just add that could be saving the life of a 10, 12, 13 years old girl or even a boy,
Sure.
right? And we'll get back to that number, to that call, once we come back after the
right,
next
understood.
break. A few minutes and we'll be back with Sheriff McDonnell. Together we are with Los Angeles County Sheriff Jim McDonnell. Sheriff, right before the break, the commercial break, you were talking about saving lives, you were talking about preventing tragedies, and you were calling our people, our community, to give you a call.
Right.
How could that happen? What's the number they can reach you if they see something, anything that could be suspicious, whether it's sex trafficking or probably a terror act?
Yeah, if you see something that would qualify as an emergency, call 911. And if you live in our jurisdiction, we'll roll out there. If you live in one of the cities policed by other police departments, Glendale, Burbank, or other places, they'll roll out there, and they know what to look for. And when they get there, they can ensure that whatever's going on there is appropriate. And if it's not, then they can take the right action to be able to hopefully help remove somebody from a very, very desperate situation.
And that is, I guess, within that motto of, if you see something, say something.
Exactly.
Is that how it is?
Exactly, yeah. You know, we say that to the point where it almost seems rote, but it's something that those words mean so much that if you see something, say something. If you see something and don't do anything, then you've allowed it to happen. You've tacitly approved of whatever that is. And so many people say, you know what, somebody should do something about that, whatever that is. We're all somebody. We all need to step up, and as good citizens step forward and say, you know what, that's not right. Let's bring in the sheriff's department or the police department to be able to take a look at it. And you know, a lot of people will say, you know what, I saw something earlier and I didn't feel right about it, but I wasn't sure, so I didn't call you. Please call us. We want to get out there. We want to be able to make sure that everything is right. If it's a mistake, we apologize and we say, hey, sorry to bother you, and we move on, but we're comfortable knowing that we checked it out and that the person was not in danger, and we moved on. And in those cases where we find, as we do too often, that somebody is being held against their will and exploited, that we have the ability to be able to stop that right there and then get them the help that they need to move forward.
So again, I guess this goes under the other motto that says, if in doubt, report.
Yeah,
Works?
no, absolutely, please, yeah. Yeah, that's our message really, is that we're there for you. We're there for the public. We do the job full time that is really the responsibility of every member of society, and that is to look out for the safety of themselves and the people that they are neighbors with. We are honored to be able to do that. We're out there 24/7. We're the only agency that by dialing 3 numbers will respond without question. And there's a reason for that, because we need to be available for people when they're not sure about something or in their time of need. When a situation escalates to something that they don't have the ability to deal with, or they're not comfortable in looking into something like a sex trafficking situation, there is potential danger to doing that. So please let us take that on.
Great to hear. And Sheriff, do you think you might have an example where such a thing happened and the life or lives were saved?
Oh God, it happens. It happens literally almost every day, where we get involved in situations. We do stings. We also follow up on investigative leads like the one we're asking for here, and we find people who are, some, for the most part, forced into this life of exploitation, and then drugged, often raped, and then put into a life where people who are, people we wouldn't suspect in many times, that are on the internet, and they're looking for an 11-year-old girl or a 12-year-old boy or whatever it is. So our goals are in that regard threefold as it relates to sex trafficking. Number one, rescue the victim, get them out of the life, get them out of danger. Number two, go after the pimp or the trafficker with all of the tools that we have and hold them accountable for what they're doing. And number three, the demand side, those that are out there online, on the cell phone, dealing with a pimp, looking to exploit a young person. That is, some would call it a John. That's not a John. That's a pedophile. That's a predator. That's someone who is looking to prey on someone much more vulnerable. We need to hold those folks accountable to a degree where we create a disincentive, so we cut back on that behavior and work towards eliminating that behavior.
Wonderful. Great to hear. And there's another part, Sheriff, and if you don't mind, of course, because it's a very important issue, it's a very human issue at the same time, and that is some of the victims, or maybe most of the victims, and out of fear, they are unable to speak out.
Right.
What will you say to those people, to the victims, that fear that has held them back, and they cannot say anything, they cannot shout out, they cannot speak out? Would you have some words for them?
Yeah, that we're there for you. We're not looking to prosecute young people who are being enslaved by a pimp. No child, a prostitute, is a term that we use to be able to share with people that a child legally cannot consent to sex. So anybody who's having sex
or
with somebody,
drugs.
Yeah, right. But where we used to prosecute young people for prostitution, we no longer do that. We treat them as victims, particularly those that are being trafficked, and then we look to see who is the exploiter and how do we hold them accountable for what they do. So for anybody watching who feels that they're not comfortable in calling the police, our role is to be able to help people who are being victimized. Some are worried over immigration issues. We are not an arm of ICE. We do not enforce immigration laws. We are here to protect the people, everyone who lives in Los Angeles County. So that should not be an impediment or an obstacle to anybody for calling us. We talk very seriously about that, because we don't want anything to get in the way of our ability to be able to get out and help people in need.
Great point, Sheriff, and thank you for bringing specifically that point out, and that is, if you have any kind of immigration status that you don't feel comfortable about, or maybe you're out of status, that should not stop you from seeking the help of the service people who have been called the Los Angeles County Sheriff and the Sheriff deputies, 17,000, 18,000 deputies.
Right, 18,000 employees, both sworn and professional staff. Right.
I see.
Yeah.
And that's a really, really very important point for our viewers, for our community members, all the population of the county, to know that they won't have any problem, even if they are out of status, they won't have any problem in that regard with the Sheriff Department if they are reporting anything that is simply wrong, unacceptable, and inhuman.
Absolutely.
All right, November 6th, less than a month from now, Election Day. it is going to be very hot elections, nationwide, of
Yeah.
course, and all levels, cities, counties, states, and U.S. Congress, U.S. Senate, and so on. What would you like to say, to start with, to our viewers when it comes to voting in general? I keep saying you have two ways to vote. Either you vote by voting or you vote by not voting.
That's so true, so true. I would ask everyone to please take our responsibilities for being members of a free society seriously, that we have the privilege of being able to vote. We have the right to vote. Let's get out there and exercise it. But in order to do that, you need to do your homework first. You need to know what the propositions are. You need to know something about the candidates who are running. And with the ability to get online today and read about all of these issues, we don't have the excuses that maybe we had in years past where I didn't have access to information. Everybody has that access today for the most part. So get to know what the issues are, get to know who the candidates are, what they stand for, do they represent your interests? And what we're talking about here is critically important to everyone. While we may not deal directly with politicians on a daily basis, we're all busy working, the reality is what each politician does, whatever office they're in, has a direct or indirect impact on our quality of life, potentially on our safety in the case of in my job. And so it's critically important that that be taken seriously, that people be informed about what their decisions will be, and then to actually exercise that and go out and vote.
And with your permission, Sheriff, I would like to add to very few people who are not as much literate with computers and internet. Just ask your 7-year-old grandchild and they will do the work for you in complete, give you all the access, all the information, all the explanations that are needed. And yes, there's no reason, there's no excuse nowadays to not to know what you want to know. And when it comes to knowing this, it's a very important factor to make the right decision, to see who is the person, who is the one who would serve you and your family and your neighborhood and your community, your city, the best. And in that regard, I guess now Sheriff McDonnell has a track record, and he might have some plans, like specific plans, I mean, about which we'll talk, I guess, when we come back in a few minutes, with your permission, Sheriff.
Please, thank you, Manoj.
Դակավի միասին ենք հարգելի հարազատներ, we're still together with Sheriff Jim McDonnell, Los Angeles County Sheriff. Sheriff, we live in a democracy.
Right.
And I am someone who doesn't understand the political or the technical jargon. If I am asking my sheriff, what are you going to do for me when you get reelected after November 6, starting November 7? What are the major things that you would tell me that I could simply understand in a plain language you will be doing for me, my family, my safety, my community, my school, and so on?
Right. I'm going to exert the opportunity I have through the leadership position I'm in to ensure that policing in Los Angeles County is done respectfully, constitutionally, and effectively. That we are going to work with all of our partner agencies to ensure that everybody has what they need to be able to do the job, and where they are not able to handle a situation, that we all work together on that operation. But that we also, use the bully pulpit we have to be able to share with the community the issues that we're facing, the challenges that we're facing, but also the successes that we're having. I think it's important to be able to give feedback to the communities that we serve as to what the public safety situation is today. And I look at where we are in our society today, in our county, and I don't know that the community gets enough credit for. You look in the city of LA in 1993, there were just under 1,200 murders. This year there will be far fewer than 300 in the city of LA. And that's similar with the level of violent crime throughout the county. And yet you don't hear much about that. We talk about the issue of the day, but we don't put it in context. We don't ever want to go back to where we were and see those levels of violence, but we also, I think, need to build on the great foundation we have today to become better and better as we move forward. We can't forget the past. We have to put ourselves in a position where we learn from the lessons of the past, but we move forward in a way where we're always looking for new opportunities to be able to make our schools, our streets, and everybody in our communities as safe as they possibly can be. And really, we do that best when we all work together. Within the law enforcement community, we are looked upon nationwide as probably having the best partnerships with federal, state, and local officials that they see anywhere else in the country. And we hear that from our federal partners who come in generally on a career track for a 3-year stay, and then they go somewhere else. So they have a point of reference, but to a person, we hear that over and over again. They say, I'm not sure how you do it here in Los Angeles County, where everybody, regardless of uniform, patch, or badges, everybody gets along together, works together, and shares the same mission. And the reality is, because we work very hard at it. We train together, we work together. We have a lot of emergency situations, whether it's fires or, whatever the challenge of the day is, that would come together in a command post configuration, using all of the resources we have in saving lives, but we get to know each other's strengths and each other's vulnerabilities, and we have the ability to work as a team and be able to support each other very well. So we don't take that lightly. We work consistently at it, and whether it's the daily crime problems we deal with, whether it's terrorism, counterterrorism efforts, or whether it's human trafficking, by working together, we are much stronger than any of us would be on our own.
And that's why our show name is Together.
I like that, yeah.
And of course, it just goes without saying. And in that perspective, in that regard, Sheriff, have you done or do you even plan or also plan on doing some real direct contact communication with the community, with the citizens, like town hall meetings, somehow a way that you can explain, you can get feedback, you hear the problems, and so on?
Yeah, I try and get out as often as I possibly can. Much of my day is spent talking to people throughout the county, big groups and small groups alike. Whenever I get an opportunity like this to be able to do it on TV, I can reach so many more people. But the challenge we face is that there's over 10 million people in the county of Los Angeles, spread out over 4,700 square miles. So it's very difficult to be able to do enough town hall meetings or enough.
That was only an example.
No, I get
it's
it.
One way of doing it.
But it's while I love being there and speaking in person to people, there's no connection like that. It is difficult because of the geography.
I feel lucky now.
Yeah, but it's an honor when I get to do that, and I will continue to try and be as many places as I can where I get to be able to talk directly with people. That's a privilege to me.
Well, of course, and I guess people would feel better. The sheriff would feel better, and that will, after all, serve the big purpose or that big goal, that noble goal that the department itself has. People will be safer. People will be more cooperative. People will feel more comfortable, and that's one of the perks of democracy, I would say. And we have few minutes left. In those few minutes, I would really like to kind of give you the freedom of saying whatever you wanted to say, and I didn't ask about you. I know no matter how long we talk, there will be something that could have been left over.
Yeah, sure.
Therefore, it's all yours, Sheriff.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I have a tendency to talk to groups, we focus on the challenges we face, what we've been able to overcome, and too often I think we don't talk about the opportunities. We see, the crime rate, the murder rate, the gangs, the challenges as it relates to counterterrorism, and I could go on, and we focus on those as opposed to focusing more on how do we prevent this from continuing to see the cycle of dysfunction that we've seen for so many years, for that to continue on to the future. And really the answer is, let's start with our kids and focus on early childhood education and being able to give kids the tools by the 3rd grade level to be reading at grade level. That's 8, 9, or 10 years old, depending on the kid. But that's the age where we start to see kids, if they're not getting positive attention in school, then they start looking for attention one other way. And if kids are not engaged and they're not able to read and write the way they should be at that level, then they start finding other ways to get attention, and it's not always positive. We start seeing kids getting into drugs and alcohol and gangs at that early an age. And so by focusing our efforts on giving kids the tools, we have the Sheriff's Youth Foundation that sponsors the Sheriff Youth Centers throughout the county, 17 centers where kids have a place to come after school, sit them down, they get through their homework, they have a mentor, they have homework help if they need it, then they can do activities and sports and leadership and computer skills and those kind of things.
Nice.
It's great. But without those centers, these kids would not have the opportunity, and many would go home to a house where they have to lock themselves in, or if they're out in, amongst the people on the street, then the potential to be victimized or to end up in with gang activity is also a real challenge. So by providing for the future, by teaching kids to read and be able to do well in school is an investment in the future. And all we need to do to validate that is to look at people who are in our state prison system, and up to 70% of that population are either illiterate or functionally illiterate, which you wonder if they had the skills early, would they have taken the path that they took that ended up putting them where they are? And I would argue that in many cases, probably not. So by us going back and at the earliest time possible, setting kids up for success, being able to mentor if we have the time. You look at Los Angeles County and we have the experts in literally every field. So if a kid expresses an interest in being an engineer or an architect or a scientist, we have the best here. If we can tap into those individuals to come and spend an hour talking to an auditorium full of 100 kids who want to be whatever they are, what an opportunity that is, what a motivator it is to keep kids in school, keep them focused on whatever their goals are, and then to have a vehicle to be able to encourage them along the way. Kids really need three things in order to be successful, and that really is hope that there will be a tomorrow, a vision for what that could be, a dream, and then a game plan on how to achieve that. And we have the ability, really, for very little in the way of resources, to be able to do that for kids, and we really owe it to them.
It is marvelous to hear a law enforcement official talking about education, because usually people perceive the law enforcement agencies as agencies that enforce laws.
Right.
But now we're talking about education, and Sheriff, you are absolutely right, and especially doing that service to the underserved communities, the underserved kids. And I would see another big positive point there. Those kids will be able to start or establish the connection with the law enforcement agents and understand that those people are there for helping me, not arresting me or punishing me, which is wonderful. Sheriff, we understand that the old problems could go, but there's always new problems. We wish you all the best in your next endeavor. We really looking forward to congratulating you on the November 6th late night maybe. And հարկելի բարեկամներ, այսօր մեր հանդիպումը միասին Los Angeles County Sheriff-ին Jim McDonnell-ին հետ էր, որը տեխնազու է վերընտրվելու նոյեմբերի երեկոյան։ Գենթատրեմ ամեն ինչ շատ լավ էր եւ շատ լավ հասկանալի էր ձեր համար, հետեւաբար կմնաց ցեզի ճիշտ որոշումը կայացնել ընտրության օրը։ Եվ ահավասիկ փորձեցինք միասին ինչ որ իրողություններ թռնել սեղանին եւ մտածել, թե միասնապար եւ միասին ինչպես կրնանք ավելի լավը լալ։ Շնորհակալություն. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And բարինը ցեզ հարկելի հարազատներ։